Hey everybody, time for another video. It's been a little while. December 1st rolled around, and so then I was doing Advent of Code, at least for the first couple of weeks. Yeah, I didn't quite make it all the way to the end, but that was a lot of fun, and then New Year's stuff, and yeah, so basically, sorry it's been a while, but time to get back to these Elisp videos, and we're going to get going on our next little project. And so what I thought would be an interesting project would be something that used a web API. Now, we're not going to get crazy with this. We're not going to get into authentication and whatever, and because that gets really hairy, at least as far as I'm concerned. Like every time I have to do something with authentication, I've got to like learn the custom OAuth stuff. And since I don't do this for a living, since I'm not living in that ecosystem all the time for web authentication and stuff, it's just like you just have to relearn it over and over and over again. And I just, just don't have the patience for that. But something simple which will let us get data from an outside source and then make an interesting use of it within Emacs. And so what I thought I would do is, or what we could do is we could explore doing like a little dictionary lookup, a thesaurus type thing. So I found this website. Let me get my cursor where it has to be. Dictionary API.com, and this is Merriam-Webster's, the Merriam-Webster dictionary, but it's their API. And they've got various APIs. I'll just open these in a couple of tabs, and we'll just play with this a little bit for now. And we're going to use their Thesaurus API. And I guess I could have dug into this on the documentation, but we're not going to do that right now. So we're going to look at, we want to get synonyms of a particular word, but we could look at antonyms or whatever. The format is JSON, and JSON is JavaScript object notation, and I think JSON.org defines it. Yeah, so it's, an object is brackets. This is a diagram for it, but you can see, let's see, so an array is things within square brackets. An object, which is like a dictionary, is within the squiggly brackets. So it's like the way you would write an object in JavaScript, very similar to Python. Not super Lispy, but still, it's fine, it'll work. But that's how it comes back for us. And we'll look at this. And then, all languages pretty much, I know the font is small here, but, pretty much every language under the sun has a way of dealing with it. They don't list Elisp here, but don't worry, obviously Elisp can handle it, or we wouldn't be doing it. But it's just a really simple object notation. And in its documentation, it basically, well, this is the JSON documentation in general. I guess we don't really need this. No, we do want this, the JSON fields. Oh, right. Yeah, and so it has the structure. It's going to have a meta field. We'll see this more in depth when we actually dive in. But the way this works, the way it all works is if you want to go to a particular, you want to get their data, you want to get the synonyms, what's going to happen is you go to this API, this URL, this website, where it's going to be www dictionary. Let me see, I can make this bigger. And don't worry, we'll get to the Emacs part. Dictionaryapi.com, API, v3, references, thesaurus, JSON, then the word you want to find the synonyms for, then question mark key equals your API key. So for this API, what you have to do is you have to register an API key, and let me just open a new window here. And that's just, you can just register here, and I already did this. So I have an API key, and just register, it gives you your key. And then what we'll do is we'll just go with this as a little example. So let's cut this whole thing. Let's paste it. And what we're going to put is my API key, which I have in another window. And, yeah, so it's just a long string. And we hit enter, and we get this string back, but this string is in JSON. And if you look at it, and I don't have a web plugin to pretty print this. I guess I could install that, but we don't need it because we'll just go back to the other window. But notice it comes out with this in the square brackets, then the squiggly brackets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if we go back to this window, that square bracket I don't think actually comes back as the data. I think, or it should come back as the data, but we'll figure it out. But you'll see here it gives you, this is what the JSON translates to. It's a dictionary which has meta, and in the meta field it has all this stuff, and we're ultimately going to want to pull out this part, the synonyms part of this. And if we scroll down to the bottom, it's got all this other stuff that we may or may not use. We're not going to use it for now, but whatever. But anyway, so that's the web side of this. And so we're going to write an Emacs package to deal with this for us. So, and we'll see how far we get with this in this video, because I do want to keep them relatively short. I just want to rearrange my windows on my other monitor just so I can see how long the recording is. So I already wrote these down. So notice that our key, and this is the key I registered, so you'll register your own key. And I also made the base URL. And the base URL, I might actually make it, I might just put this into the function that we actually write rather than having a variable float around or something, but again, whatever. Also, I probably want to make the key a def custom, so it's saved in the configuration, so the user can put their own key in it, so that they can just save it as a variable. But again, that's, yeah. And if you not familiar with def custom, if you look at the previous Elisp video I made, we covered that. So we now have to now get this data from the website. And so I was like, okay, well, first we have to compose our URL and then make the call. And so for that, we're just going to use the concat call. So we're going to cat onto the base URL, and we're going to add to that the word. So let's say umpire. I think that was the word that they had in their test. And then we're going to need a question mark key, because that's the next thing we need, or our key equals, and then we need our key. And if we execute this, it's not going to work because we have to execute Control-XE, Control-XE to evaluate our variables. And now if we run this, now we've got our complete URL. And well, how do we pull this data from the website? And I did a whole bunch of looking and Googling. I would be like, let's look at the command H function HTTP. Is it something like that? And I would look through these. And, anyway, I looked all over the place, and I ultimately came up with URL retrieve URL, not UTL, URL retrieve synchronously. And there's also Control-HF to describe a function, URL retrieve, which does it asynchronously, which means it'll go in the background and then call something with the result. But since I want this to be an interactive editing function, like I'm typing, I hit the special hotkey, it looks for synonyms for the word that I'm over, and then brings it back, and I can select one. It made sense to me to make this synchronously. So let's look at the documentation for that. And so basically, URL retrieves synchronously. We give it a URL, and then we can give it silent and inhibit cookies and timeout. And it'll return a buffer containing the data, or nil if there's nothing associated with it. So let's test this out. And we run it. And notice on the bottom, we get a buffer. Okay, well, that doesn't do us much good. We got to switch to that buffer, but I don't see the buffer in here. So what we can do is we can go switch to buffer. And I'm just doing it down there, next line, so we can, so it just stays on my screen. So now if we execute this, it dumps us into this buffer, and this is what we're going to get back. Now, this is pretty typical of Emacs functions that get data, is that they put it into a buffer, and then you can work with the buffer programmatically. So this is ultimately what we're going to work with. And we're just going to look at this for a minute and notice we get the header here. And what we're going to want to do strategically on this is we're going to want to chop off that first part. So we're going to want to start here, come down to here, whoops, and whack that. And then notice that what we're left with is JSON. Is this JSON blob? And I'm going to look at, let me see if I have a JSON pretty print buffer. And notice that this is now this JSON format. We have a list where the 0th element of the list is this dictionary. And this dictionary has meta, and let's see, since we can check opening, and that closes that. So meta closes here, and then it has HWI. I don't know what that is. It's got all these other things. And we could go down to the synonym list, which has word, adjudicator, word, arbiter, word, whatever. But we can just poke around here, the stems for stemming, stuff like that. We have a synonym list down there. But in this meta field, there's also a nice, simple synonym list over here. So this is ultimately what we're going to target when we get to it. But for the time being, let's close our buffer. And let's start up. We're going to write something. So defun, get synonyms. And its parameter is going to be word. We'll leave out the doc string. And so let's do some let star. So again, this is how we define our variables. We've done this in earlier videos. And our URL is going to be concat our base URL, again, which I could just define in here, followed by the word, followed by the question mark key equals, followed by our key. And again, I'd make a better variable, something more local to this, like underscore thesaurus, I don't know, whatever. So now we've got our URL defined, and let's now talk about making our response defined. And I need another open paren, I think here, yes. Yeah. And so our response is going to be now, if we just do our URL retrieve, or retrieve synchronously, and we're going to do our retrieve off of that. Well, let's just do that for now. And I'm just going to put this on the following line just for ease. And let's just return our response. Execute that, Control X, Control E. And now let's say get synonyms. Let's fix that. So if we run that, I have to re-execute this. And notice we get the buffer. So that doesn't really help us. We could switch to the buffer, but that's going to be kind of ugly, and that's not going to look so good. So there's another useful utility that we have, which is, or a function we have, which is with current buffer. And what with current buffer lets us do, and I'm just spacing this out for now, with current buffer, we bring on the help. With current buffer, we basically give it the buffer, and then we give it the body of what to do with this. And basically, that's going to return the buffer. Let's just see what it does, plain and simple. Let's get our parens there. Come here. And we still just get the buffer. We're not really doing much with that, but let's do something with that buffer. Why don't we, well, we know what the buffer is going to look like. We know we got to get to that empty, or actually, let's do something first. There's another function. Sorry, I forgot about this. Buffer string. And buffer string returns the contents of the buffer. So, now, if we run this again and do this, notice that it returns the whole, the whole schmear. So buffer string. So with current buffer says we want to do some commands with this buffer, with whatever we're getting back from there, and we're just going to pull out the string from it. And so that's a way of working on the buffer behind the strings. You can just use it like it's a big place where your data is. Do your manipulations, and we're going to be good. So what we're going to do here, though, is we said we wanted to do, is we wanted to chop off, I'm just going to run this again. We wanted to chop off this top part. So what we're going to do before we return the buffer string is we're going to go to character, point min, go to the top of the buffer. We're going to search forward for that regular expression. So again, notice we're bringing together all the things we've done in earlier videos. And the regular expression, the caret means the beginning of the line, the $sign means the end of the line. So what we're doing here is we're saying, give me an empty string. So it's going to search forward. I lost my buffer. It's going to search forward to here, to this empty string. Kill the buffer. So once we've searched forward, we can, we don't really have to go to point, well, no, we might have to go, we have to go to point min for the search to make sure that we're at the beginning of the buffer before we search. But then we can just delete the region from the beginning to that point. And notice on, re-execute that, and notice now we don't have that stuff on top. We just have that string, open bracket, meta, blah, 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 blah. Big JSON blob. So that's our raw response. So pretty good. Now we're getting there. And we're just going to go a little further today because we're approaching 20 minutes. So what we're just going to do here is we're going to convert this into JSON. So we're going to get the JSON version of our response. So we'll call that JSON response. And that's just going to be JSON parse string of the response. And then we'll return the JSON response from our function. And I got a mistake somewhere. So close it off. And it's given us back a nil. So we got some issue here. So we'll fix this. Let's once again, let's just get the response. Probably not. Okay, get the synonyms. I probably just messed up my parens somewhere. And so all we should have to do here is JSON response, just our new variable, our new local variable, is going to be JSON, what did I say it was again? Parse string of response. Close that up. Yeah, I just had that closed, right? And now notice that the result is truncated, um, but in theory, oh, actually, I don't want to return response. I want to return JSON response. But in theory, yeah, we now just have this object. This is now an Emacs thing. So it's like, looks like it's an array, which has a hash table in it, which you can see. And we did arrays and hash tables and lists, and we see all of that is in there. So that's all we have to do. It's a step at a time. Now, how did I do all of this? How do I learn all of this? A lot of Googling, a lot of looking at the help built into Emacs. But that was it. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to stop at this point. We have the ability to go to our web API, get our list of synonyms, not our list of synonyms, but get our raw JSON response. What we're going to do in the next video is we're going to learn how we can tame that, how we can parse that down into, basically into just the synonym list, and then we're going to put it all together. Okay, so that's it for today.